At my wedding, the air smelled like frosting and perfume sweet enough to choke on. The band had just switched to something soft when my mother leaned in, smiling for the cameras, and said, "We're passing the car his parents gave you over to your sister." Her tone was light, rehearsed like she was rearranging napkins. Danielle laughed beside her sequins flashing. "Relax," she said, "it's just a car." The guests didn't catch it, but my stomach did a drop cold and final. My groom didn't move. He just looked at them, calm, unreadable. And that look changed everything. People say weddings reveal who really loves you. Mine revealed who never did. I grew up in a house where fairness was a story told at dinner, never lived in the kitchen. My mother, Grace, loved order, the kind that kept her looking perfect and kept me quiet. My father, Richard, was the man who believed silence fixed things. And Danielle, my little sister, was the delicate one. The world bent for her. I was the hinge that made it move. When we were kids, she got the bigger room because she was afraid of the dark. When she crashed her first car, Mom blamed the rain. I worked double shifts to buy mine, and Mom called it good character building. Danielle was the reason I was the resource. That pattern raised me, someone always taking, someone always explaining. By 29, I had built a life outside their script. I was an interior designer, careful and precise, the kind of woman who paid her own bills and didn't borrow dresses. Meeting Evan felt like stepping into sunlight that didn't burn. He came from a family that believed in boundaries and respect. His parents weren't rich, but they were generous in the way that cost nothing, listening, trusting, handing you space. At our rehearsal dinner, they handed me a small silver key in an envelope. "You built this together," his father said. "Here's something to help you move forward." A used car, clean, reliable, titled in my name. It wasn't about the metal, it was about what it meant. Trust, partnership, the kind of gift you protect. That night, I'd caught Mom's expression, tight, polite, already calculating. She'd smiled at Evan's parents and said, "How thoughtful," but her eyes flicked to Danielle like a reflex. I should have recognized it for what it was, an early warning. The morning of the wedding, she fussed over my hair, told me how proud she was. "You've always been so giving, Eva," she said, smoothing my veil. "Don't lose that." Her perfume filled the air, sweet, heavy, impossible to breathe through. I smiled back, pretending not to understand the message behind the compliment. But part of me already knew. Some gifts aren't meant to be shared. The reception felt like a movie playing too loud. Laughter, clinking glasses, 1,000 polite smiles, all performing the same scene. Evan's hand rested on my back as we swayed through our first dance. For a moment, it almost felt safe, like the world had agreed to behave. Then I saw my mother cutting through the crowd, her pageant smile already set in place. She stopped beside us, perfume trailing behind her, and spoke just loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. "We're passing the car his parents gave you, over to your sister." Every sound in the room blurred. Someone laughed at another table. The band's singer drew out a note that suddenly felt like sirens. Danielle appeared glowing under the fairy light sequins, throwing shards of light across her grin. "Relax," she said, a playful shrug in her voice. "It's just a car." It wasn't about the car. It was about everything that had ever been taken and repackaged as kindness. I looked at my mother's face, composed, benevolent, so sure she was right. She tilted her head, waiting for me to perform gratitude. "You and Evan can manage with one," she added. "You've always been so practical." A guest snapped a photo, catching her hand on my arm, her smile wide. In the picture, no one would see the way her fingers tightened. I didn't respond. Evan's thumb brushed the inside of my wrist. A small question, "Are you okay?" I breathed in glass and frosting and the old taste of obedience. Dad drifted over, drawn by the tone in her voice. "What's going on?" he asked, eyes flicking between us. "Nothing serious." Mom answered quickly, "Just helping Danielle out. She's had awful luck with cars." Danielle laughed again, soft and rehearsed. "It's fine, Mom. She doesn't mind sharing." Sharing. The word landed like a bruise. I thought about the night I'd stayed up fixing Danielle's resume, the dress she'd borrowed, and lost the endless apologies I made on her behalf. All those small surrenders dressed as love. I smiled, then small, calm, dangerous. "You're right," I said. "I don't mind sharing." My mother relaxed, mistaking surrender for peace. Evan didn't. His hand found mine again, steady, certain. Across the room, the fairy lights flickered. A camera flashed. The air felt tight, like the moment before a storm breaks. I leaned closer to Evan and whispered, "It's starting again." He looked at me, not surprised, just ready, and in that silence I realized something simple: they didn't come to celebrate me. They came to test how much of me was still theirs. After the cake was cut and the music softened, the room began to empty into laughter and wine. I smiled through photos, accepted congratulations that tasted like dust, and counted the minutes until I could breathe again. When the last guest disappeared toward the parking lot, Evan and I slipped out a side door into the quiet hallway. He leaned against the wall, unbuttoning his collar. "Do you want me to say something to them?" "No," I said. My voice didn't shake. "We already did." He frowned, then understood. "We talked about this months ago, half joking over takeout. My mother's habit of turning my things into family property wasn't new, it was inherited behavior, so I'd decided to stop being inheritable. 2 weeks before the wedding, my coworker, who also happened to be a paralegal, helped me draft a notarized declaration. Every gift received in my name was legally protected, not to be transferred or sold without my written consent. I'd signed it in blue ink. So had Evan. I remembered her exact words when she stamped it, "You're not being paranoid. You're being prepared." Back in the hall, Evan reached for my hand. "You knew this might happen." "I hoped it wouldn't," I said, "but I didn't want to bleed again without a bandage." We stood there for a while, listening to muffled laughter from the banquet room. It sounded distant, hollow, like something already ending. I thought about the look on my mother's face, the delight of control disguised as generosity. She'd spent years training me to play the role of the gracious daughter. I had learned it so well that no one saw the quiet calculations behind my smile. Evan's phone buzzed. A text from one of the guests. "Your sister's already posting about the car." He turned the screen toward me. There it was, a photo from our garage, Danielle posing beside the car with the caption, "Finally got a ride that fits me." I laughed once, dry and low. She couldn't even wait till morning. He met my eyes. "So what do we do now?" I reached for my clutch fingers, brushing the thick envelope inside. "Now," I said. "We let them open their own trap." Evan exhaled slowly, a quiet sort of pride in his voice. "Then let's go finish the party." We straightened our clothes, fixed our smiles, and walked back toward the music. My heart was steady now. The storm had already changed direction. We walked back into the ballroom as the band shifted into another safe romantic tune, something meant to fill silence. The room glowed gold again, but the air had changed. Conversations felt thinner. Eyes darted away and back. My mother was near the cake table, laughing too loudly, a queen restored to her stage. Danielle hovered beside her phone in hand, pretending to scroll. When she saw us, Mom brightened. "There they are," she called, like we'd been gone on a honeymoon already. "Everyone's asking where the bride went." I smiled, handling a few final details. She didn't hear the weight in that sentence. Or maybe she did, and thought she could still outplay me. "Good," she said. "We're wrapping up soon. Danielle needs a ride home anyway." Evan stepped forward just a little. "She has one now, doesn't she?" His voice was light, polite, surgical. Mom blinked. "What?" "The car," I said. "You said she's taking it." Danielle tensed, eyes flicking between us. "Oh, come on, Eva," she started. "Don't make this weird. It's just a car I finished for her, I heard." Dad wandered closer, trying for peacekeeping. "Can we not do this here?" I turned to him. Calm. "Here's the thing, Dad. This is where she did it. Publicly." The band faltered, then kept playing. A few guests turned their heads, the scent of champagne turning sharp. Mom's smile stiffened. "Eva, sweetheart, you're overreacting." It was a misunderstanding. We meant Evan held out an envelope. "You might want to read this before you finish that sentence." Her hand hesitated before taking it. She glanced at Danielle, then at me, then unfolded the paper. The rustle was loud enough to cut the music. Danielle leaned in to read over her shoulder. At first confusion, then recognition, then color draining inch by inch. Mom tried to laugh. "What is this? A notarized declaration," I said. "Executed 2 weeks ago. It states that all wedding gifts titled in my name can't be sold, gifted, or transferred without my written consent. Any attempt triggers a legal review and forfeits future inheritance from Evan's side." The last words landed like a stone dropped into a still pond. Conversation stopped. Someone whispered, "Oh, wow." Danielle let out a short, panicked laugh. "You can't be serious." I met her eyes. Completely. Dad exhaled through his nose. "This is petty Eva." "No," I said softly. "Petty is pretending theft is family tradition." Mom's voice hardened. "We're family. You don't treat us like criminals." "You went into our garage last night," I replied. "You took photos of the car and posted them." Danielle's face froze. "That was a joke." "Symbolic," Evan asked quietly. "Symbolic of what exactly?" Her lips parted. No answer. I turned to Mom. "This isn't about the car, it's about the pattern. You call it love when you take what's mine and tell me I'm good for giving it." "You're being dramatic," she snapped. "Maybe I said, but this time the drama has witnesses." A ripple went through the guests, phones half raised, half hidden. Someone's aunt mouthed drama behind her champagne flute. Danielle's voice cracked. "You'd really embarrass the family like this." "I'm not embarrassing anyone," I said. "I'm just ending the script." Evan took my hand, grounding me. His tone was even calm. "Mrs. Harper, you should keep that paper. It's legal documentation." Mom stared at him like he'd betrayed her personally. "You encouraged this." "No," he said. "She didn't need encouragement. Just respect." Danielle's face turned red. "You married up, didn't you?" "Think you're better than us now?" Evan didn't answer. I did. Better no. "Boundaried." "Absolutely." The word hung there. Boundaried. Like a foreign language in that house. Mom tried again, desperate. "We raised you to be kind. You raised me to give," I said. "You taught her to take." That was the fracture. The one sentence that split the air in half. The band stopped playing altogether. Even the fairy lights seemed to flicker. Danielle stepped closer, trembling. "You'll regret this." I smiled faintly. I already did for 29 years. For the first time, Mom's perfect composure cracked. Her voice wavered. "Eva, please. Don't do this in front of everyone. Then you shouldn't have done it to me in front of everyone." She opened her mouth again, but no words came out. The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. Evan leaned into the band. "Play something," he said quietly. The drummer lifted his sticks, uncertain. The singer looked at me for permission. I nodded. Music rose again, soft, defiant, a heartbeat. Evan pulled me back to the dance floor. The guests parted like we were royalty or a bomb. As we moved, I caught reflections in the mirrors. Mom's face pale and still. Danielle's mascara smudged, Dad staring at the floor. The envelope sat on the table between empty glasses. Evan whispered, "Breathe." "I am," I said. And for once, it was true. When the song ended, I turned to my parents, still frozen near the cake. "Help isn't theft," I said evenly, "and love isn't access." I placed the empty champagne flute beside the envelope and walked away with Evan through a sea of quiet stares. Behind us, the applause didn't come, just whispers like wind through a cracked door. Outside, under the string lights, I exhaled everything I'd been holding for years. Evan slipped his arm around me. "You okay?" I nodded. "I think I just stopped apologizing." He smiled. "About time." We stepped into the night, the music still humming behind the doors. Somewhere inside the smile my mother wore all my life finally fell. The drive home was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt earned. The city lights blurred past soft and far away. I rolled the window down, letting the wind pull at my veil until it came loose and drifted into the night. Evan laughed under his breath. "You just threw away your movie moment." "Good," I said. "I don't want one." We drove in silence after that, hand in hand, the same car they tried to steal humming beneath us. Every mile felt like distance from an old wound. When we reached our house, Evan turned off the engine but didn't move. "You did it," he said quietly. "I did what broke the pattern?" Inside the kitchen still smelled like the morning coffee we never finished. I slipped out of my shoes, feeling the tile cool under my feet. On the counter sat my phone, buzzing with missed calls, Mom. Danielle, unknown numbers. I turned it face down. Outside, crickets filled the air. For the first time, the silence didn't ache. It settled. Evan wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Still want that honeymoon drive?" I smiled. "Let's take the car." A week later, I stood in our kitchen with sunlight spilling across the floor. The same house, the same car in the driveway, but everything inside me felt rewired. On the fridge, one photo remained the moment at the wedding when Mom's smile cracked and I held the envelope. I used to think it looked harsh. Now it looked honest. I realized freedom didn't roar. It whispered. It was the sound of a phone that didn't ring anymore, of doors I could lock without guilt. People say families fall apart because of pride or money. Maybe. But sometimes they fall apart because one person finally stops pretending. I looked at that photo and whispered, boundaries don't destroy families. They define them. If you've ever had to draw a line with someone who called it love, share your story below. You're not alone and you don't owe anyone your peace.
My name is Brenda Brown. I'm 32 years old. And the night everything ended began with the smell of garlic and burnt hope. The kitchen was warm, alive, with the hiss of olive oil and the slow, rhythmic stirring of sauce. I'd made pasta arrabbiata, Paul's favorite. I'd told myself it would help break the ice after a week of tension thick enough to choke on. Paul had been distant lately, curt texts, late nights, the occasional sigh that said more than words ever could. I thought maybe a home-cooked dinner might thaw him out. It used to work before his silences started feeling like walls. The lock clicked. The sound made my stomach twist. He walked in handsome, sharp suit tie, loosened eyes, already half checked out of the room. "Smells strong," he said flatly, tossing his keys on the counter. "It's arrabbiata," I replied, forcing a lightness I didn't feel. "Your favorite, remember?" He didn't answer, just opened the fridge and pulled out a bottle of red wine. He poured himself a glass, no offer for me, and leaned against the counter, watching the sauce bubble. I tried again. "Rough day." "They're all rough days," he said. "You wouldn't get it. You just sit at a desk all day pushing pixels. My work actually deals with people real problems." The jab landed like a paper cut small, but it stung. "I was trying to do something nice," I said quietly. "I even booked us that table at the Oak for Saturday. You love that place." His expression flickered, then hardened. "Saturday." He took a long sip. "Didn't I tell you Sam's throwing that party Saturday night?" "You mentioned it, but I thought..." "Well, think harder next time he cut in. Cancel it." I stared at him, spoon frozen in midair. "You could just say thank you, you know." He looked up, then the look of someone itching for a fight. "God, why is everything such a problem with you, Brenda? You never listen." I set the spoon down. "I do listen, Paul. Maybe too much. I just never get heard." He laughed, sharp and humorless. "You're so dramatic. You make everything about feelings. Maybe if you focused on being interesting once in a while." "Interesting," I repeated. "You mean unpredictable, chaotic, like you." That hit him, his jaw clenched. "You're so safe, so predictable. You're like beige paint. You never surprise me." The words sank in slowly like poison. I took a breath, steady and cold. "You want surprises? Okay, here's when I'm done apologizing for being the one who keeps things stable while you play emotional roulette." He stared, blinking, not used to resistance. "You know what the real problem is," he said, voice dropping low. "You're boring, even in bed." "Ava." My stomach turned to ice. "What about Ava?" He smirked. "She was passionate, wild, better than you'll ever be." The air left my body. The world around me blurred, the sizzling sauce, the ticking clock, his lips still moving like a distant echo. Every shared laugh, every touch, all rewritten in that moment as a lie. I didn't scream, didn't throw the glass, didn't beg. I just turned off the stove, wiped my hands on a towel, and walked past him. "Where are you going?" he asked. "To remember who I was before you decided to break her," I said softly. I closed the bedroom door behind me. That night I didn't cry. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring into the dark, feeling something colder and clearer than sadness. Freedom. A terrifying, empty kind of freedom, but freedom nonetheless. When dawn came, I realized I'd already made my decision. I wasn't staying. Not another fight. Not another apology for being too calm or too boring. The game was over. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt awake. The morning after felt eerily calm, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm has ripped through, leaving only the wreckage behind. Paul's alarm went off at 7:00. I was already awake, sitting by the window with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The city was stirring outside, and I watched it through the glass, like someone looking at a world they no longer belonged to. He emerged from the bedroom, freshly showered, towel around his neck, acting as if nothing had happened. The smell of his cologne filled the space like an unwelcome ghost. "You're up early," he said casually. "Lots to do," I replied, my voice flat, uninviting. He hovered in the doorway, probably expecting the usual routine, the conversation, the tears, the forgiveness. But I wasn't playing that script anymore. About last night, he began rubbing the back of his neck. You know how you get sometimes, and I turned to look at him. Whatever he saw in my face stopped him mid-sentence. My expression was cold, distant, the look of someone who had already left, just not physically. We can talk later, I said quietly. He frowned confused, but didn't push. Whatever, I'll be late. And just like that, he was gone. The moment the front door clicked shut, I exhaled a long, quiet breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for years. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was clean. I stood up, walked to the closet, and pulled out my old suitcase. I began to pack. Not in a rush, not in panic. It was ritualistic, deliberate. Clothes, documents, laptop, toothbrush. I left behind everything sentimental, the framed photos, the stupid decorative vase he insisted on buying, the overpriced throw blanket that had couple goals embroidered on the corner. The only personal thing I took was my grandmother's leather journal, small, worn, filled with words that once reminded me who I was. When I was done, I stood in the living room and looked around. The apartment felt like a crime scene. The half-empty wine glass, the burned sauce in the pan, the echo of last night's words still hanging in the air. I took my key off the keychain and placed it beside the wine glass. That was my goodbye. No note, no message. He didn't deserve an explanation. He'd only twist into a new accusation. Then I picked up my bags and walked out. Outside, the morning light hit my face, cool, sharp, and oddly cleansing. Every step away from that building felt like reclaiming oxygen. By noon, I'd signed the short-term lease for a small studio across town. Neutral walls, minimal furniture, no memories, no ghosts. It wasn't home yet, but it was mine. That first night, the silence pressed in on me. But it wasn't suffocating. It was pure. It hummed like a blank canvas waiting to be filled. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't scroll through old photos. I just lay in bed and let myself feel everything. The ache, the relief, the strange stillness of starting over. The next few days blurred together in quiet routines. Work, coffee, long walks, the gym. No Paul, no drama, just space. On the 7th day, I came home to a voicemail. The number was unfamiliar, but I knew that voice instantly. Seriously, Brenda. You're just going to run away. That's so pathetic. You left your stupid notebook on the shelf and your good winter coat. I'm not your storage unit. Call me back so we can talk like adults. I listened once, then deleted it. No anger, no tears, just a small, dry laugh. He still thought he had control. He didn't understand that silence was the loudest answer he'd ever get from me. That night, I opened my grandmother's journal and wrote one line. Freedom doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it just feels like breathing again. And for the first time in years, I fell asleep without waiting for the sound of a key turning in the door. 3 weeks passed before I heard from him again. By then, I'd started to reclaim a rhythm. My new apartment smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and coffee instead of his cologne. The walls were bare, but the quiet was warm. I ran before sunrise. I worked. I read. I learned how to fill silence without fear. Then one afternoon, my phone pinged a new email. The subject line stopped me cold. We need to talk, Brenda. I'm worried about you. My chest tightened, but only for a second. I opened it already expecting the performance. This is really immature, running away and blocking me. It's extreme. My therapist says people who do this are projecting childhood trauma. I'm not angry. I'm concerned. We shared a life for years. We at least deserve a conversation. It was textbook Paul, manipulative concern, wrapped in self-righteousness. He wasn't worried. He was offended that his audience had left. I hit delete. Then I made a filter so anything from him went straight to trash. No more ghosts. That weekend, I met my old friend Dana for coffee the first time we'd seen each other in months. She was loud, unfiltered, and everything I'd forgotten I missed. She listened quietly as I told her what happened. When I was done, she exhaled a long, low whistle. Girl, he's lucky you didn't dump a pot of pasta over his head. I laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. Tempting. He's probably already moved on, Dana said, rolling her eyes. Guys like that don't sit in regret. They just find another ego boost. Yeah, I said, stirring my coffee. Her name was Ava. Dana's brow furrowed. Wait, was his ex, I explained. The one he compared me to. I'm sure he's already crawling back to her. Dana reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then let him. He'll just poison another person. I smiled, but inside her words hit deeper than she realized. Because she was right. Paul was poison charming, convincing, lethal in small doses. That night, I blocked him everywhere: phone, email, even the joint streaming account we used to share. It felt final. I thought that was the end of it. But ghosts never stay buried, do they? A few weeks later, Dana texted me late one night. Dana, hey, random question. Did Paul ever date a girl named Ava again? Me, probably. Why Dana? Because Ava just tagged him on Instagram. Some fancy rooftop dinner. Caption said, round 2. Maybe this time we'll get it right. I stared at the message for a long time, my heart utterly still. It didn't hurt. Not really. It just felt predictable. Good luck to her, I typed back. The next morning, I deleted all my social media accounts. Not to hide, to disappear from his orbit entirely. Weeks passed. I learned to play guitar badly. I burned a few dinners. I started sleeping again. Then one evening, while meal prepping chicken and vegetables, my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. Brenda, I know you're getting these. Ava and I, it's over. She cheated. With my friend Sam. I should have listened to you. You were the only real thing I had. Please, can we just talk? I miss you. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Not I'm sorry, not I was wrong, just I miss you. Paul wasn't reaching out to make amends. He was reaching for the person he used to drain. I didn't reply. Instead, I texted Dana. Guess who finally got cheated on by Ava? Oh, the irony, she replied. Did you answer no? Silence says everything. I put my phone face down and finished cooking. Later that night, while the city hummed outside my window, I picked up my grandmother's journal again and wrote, when the ghosts come knocking, don't open the door. They only want to drag you back to the fire you escaped. And for the first time, I believed it. 3 months later, life felt steady again, maybe even good. I'd stopped counting the days since Paul. The ache that once sat heavy in my chest had dulled to a quiet scar. I'd found a rhythm that belonged only to me, early runs by the River Black, coffee-long playlists that didn't remind me of anyone. And then there was Noah. We'd met at a bookstore when we both reached for the same novel. He smiled, offered it to me, and we ended up talking for an hour between dusty shelves. He wasn't flashy like Paul. He didn't perform his charm. He just existed calmly, fully. After a few weeks of slow, careful dinners and long walks, I realized something startling. I could laugh again, really laugh, without checking someone else's reaction first. So when my phone buzzed during our Friday dinner at the small tapas bar on 8th Street, I barely looked at it. Someone's popular, Noah teased. Probably spam, I said, flipping it face down. He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Spam can wait. Tell me more about Lisbon. I laughed and leaned in, talking about my dream of visiting Portugal one day. For 2 hours, I forgot the world outside our little table. But later, as I walked up to my apartment, the unease hit me. My phone was buzzing again repeatedly. I unlocked it. 7 messages, all from an unknown number, and I knew. Instantly. I opened the first one. Brenda, please don't ignore me. I don't know if this is still your number. Another. I'm sorry for everything I said. I didn't mean it. I was angry and stupid. And another. You were the best thing in my life. The only real thing. I see that now. My fingers hovered above the screen, frozen. Then, Ava's gone. She left. She said she couldn't handle it. I'm a mess, Brenda. I can't do this alone. She's pregnant. My vision tunneled. He kept going, message after message, desperation bleeding through the words. She told me after I lost everything. And then she blocked me. I don't know what to do. I can't sleep. I keep thinking about how peaceful you were, how safe. You were my calm. Please, Brenda, I have no one else. I sat down on the edge of my bed, staring at the screen. The same man who once mocked me for being boring now craved the stability he'd shattered. The same safe, predictable love he'd sneered at was suddenly the lifeline he wanted back. But this time I didn't feel anger, or satisfaction, or anything close to pity. Just detachment. He had chosen the storm. He had glorified the chaos. And now he was drowning in the flood he created. I didn't reply, not a single word. Instead, I deleted every message, then blocked the number. I poured myself a glass of water and sat by the window. The city outside was soft with light rain, the kind that makes everything shimmer. Peace, that was the word that came to mind. Not revenge, not closure, just peace. I whispered it aloud, letting the words settle into the room. Peace. Later, when I crawled into bed, I realized something quietly profound. Paul was still running from consequences, still looking for someone to save him. But I had stopped running altogether. And maybe that was the real difference between us. It happened on a gray Tuesday morning, one of those quiet, uneventful days that feels harmless until it suddenly isn't. The gym parking lot was almost empty. I was halfway through my usual post-run stretch when I saw him, leaning against my car. Paul. He looked smaller somehow, thinner. The arrogance that used to fill every inch of his body had deflated into something frail and uncertain. He was wearing my old winter coat, the one he once said made me look like a librarian. The irony was cruel enough to make me laugh if I hadn't been so tired of the story. He straightened when he saw me. Brenda. His voice cracked on my name. I stopped a few feet away. You shouldn't be here. I didn't know where else to go. His hands were shoved deep in the coat pockets, his eyes darting everywhere but mine. You got my text right. I did. He nodded, swallowing hard. Then, Ava's gone. She left. She's keeping the baby, but she wants nothing to do with me. He let out a hollow laugh. Guess passion doesn't pay the bills after all. I said nothing. He took a step closer, desperation sharpening his tone. You once said you'd always be there for me, remember? You said no matter what happened, you'd never walk away. That was a promise I made to someone who doesn't exist anymore, I said quietly. You killed that version of yourself. He blinked. So what? You're just going to abandon me. You of all people, you don't abandon people. I'm not abandoning you, Paul. I kept my voice calm even. I left you months ago. You just refused to notice. His face twisted, the guilt morphing into anger. You think you're so much better than me now, don't you? You and your perfect little peaceful life. You're still the same boring, predictable. Careful, I said. My voice was soft, but it landed like a strike. You've run out of power to hurt me. He froze. The silence between us stretched heavy and uncomfortable. For a moment, I saw it, the flash of realization behind his eyes. The understanding that I truly meant it. That he couldn't pull me back in this time. His lip trembled. I'm lost, Brenda. I know, I said, and I hope you find your way, but not through me. He flinched like the words had weight. When I unlocked my car, he stepped aside automatically. His shoulders slumped, his breath fogging in the cold air. You really feel nothing, do you? He asked quietly. I paused, hand on the car door. No, not anymore. And that was the truth, the saddest and most freeing truth of all. Because love hadn't turned to hate, it had simply evaporated. He stood there rooted in place as I got in and started the engine. Through the windshield, he looked smaller still, a shadow of the man who once thought he was untouchable. As I pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of him in the rearview mirror, standing alone in the empty parking lot, the wind tugging at my old coat, his face a mix of regret and disbelief. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel sorrow. I just felt done, truly, completely done. And that nothingness, that clean, still silence, was worth more than any revenge could ever give. 2 months passed before his name appeared again, not on my phone, but in a text from Sam, a mutual acquaintance I hadn't spoken to in almost a year. Hey, just ran into Ava at the grocery store. She had the baby, a little boy. Paul's living back with his parents. It's messy. I stared at the message, waiting for some kind of reaction, anger, pity, satisfaction, anything. But there was only stillness. I typed back, thanks for letting me know. Hope they're both okay. And I meant it in the most detached human way possible. I set the phone aside and went back to chopping vegetables for dinner. Noah was coming over soon. He arrived 10 minutes later, bringing that quiet calm that had become my new favorite sound. No tension, no walking on eggshells, no guessing what mood I was coming home to. Just simple, steady peace. We ate on the balcony, the night air soft, the city humming below. Noah poured me a glass of wine and smiled. You've been quiet tonight. Just thinking, I said. About him. I hesitated for a second. But it's strange. It's like thinking about a character in a story I read once. I remember the plot, but I don't feel anything about it anymore. He nodded, thoughtful. That's what healing sounds like. We clinked glasses. I smiled because it was true. After he left that night, I tidied up the table, washed the dishes, and opened my grandmother's leather journal, the same one I'd taken the day I left Paul. On the first page months ago, I had written, freedom doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it just feels like breathing again. Tonight I added another line beneath it. Peace isn't boring. It's freedom. I set the pen down and leaned back in my chair, looking around the apartment. My guitar rested against the wall. A hiking brochure Noah had brought over sat on the coffee table. A candle flickered quietly by the window, the scent of cedar and clean air. This space was no longer just a place to escape to. It was mine, every inch of it, shaped by choices that were finally my own. I thought about Paul, about how he had traded stability for excitement, devotion for chaos, about how he'd once sneered at my calm life, only to end up begging for it back. He'd gotten his storm, and I had found my stillness. I wasn't the woman who begged to be understood anymore. I wasn't the one who stayed and explained and waited for change that would never come. I was the woman who walked away and never looked back. The city outside was silent, the kind of silence that hums like a lullaby instead of a wound. I closed the journal, turned off the light, and whispered into the dark. Not to Paul. Not to anyone, just to myself. This is what peace feels like. And in that moment, I knew the story was over. My name is Stefania Moore, and I was 28 years old when my life unraveled 2 weeks before my wedding. At the time, I thought I had everything figured out, a stable career as a project manager, a fiancé I adored, and a future that finally felt safe. I met Andrew Carter back in college. He was studying marketing, all charm and easy laughter, with that type of energy that made everyone want to be around him. I was quieter, the type to take notes for both of us and plan 3 steps ahead while he improvised life. Somehow it worked. After graduation, when his first job fell apart because the company downsized, I picked up extra shifts at work to cover rent. I told myself that's what love looked like: partnership, sacrifice, loyalty. When Andrew proposed 2 years later, it was on a quiet hike near a lake we used to visit during finals week. There was no flash mob, no champagne bottle, just us, the sound of water and his trembling hands. I said yes before he even finished asking. Planning the wedding became my second job. The venue, the florist, the live band, he wanted it to feel grand but personal. I paid for most of it from the savings I'd built after years of budgeting every paycheck. He promised to contribute once his next project paid off. I believed him, I always did. Andrew's new job at a small advertising agency seemed to excite him at first, but soon the late nights started: client dinners, team drinks, networking events. Sometimes he'd stumble home after midnight, smelling like whiskey and laughter that wasn't mine. I tried not to nag. I'd be waiting on the couch, half asleep, pretending I hadn't been scrolling through social media, staring at pictures of him tagged in photos with colleagues, women in sparkly dresses, drinks in hand, captions that said things like, "Life's too short for routine." He'd kiss my forehead, mutter something like, "You worry too much, Stefania," and head straight to the shower. I told myself he was just stressed. Every couple had rough patches before a wedding. That's what everyone said. But somewhere deep down, the silence between us started to feel louder than our conversations. One night, while we were having dinner, Andrew joked, "You know, marriage is basically a full-time job. Are you ready to be my boss for life?" He laughed, but his eyes darted down at his phone mid-sentence. He wasn't waiting for my answer. He was waiting for a message. I smiled, pretending not to notice, pretending that the man in front of me was still the one who used to leave notes in my lunchbox saying, "You make my chaos make sense." The week before the wedding, his best friend Travis started calling constantly. They'd known each other since college, loud, impulsive, always planning parties. Travis was in charge of the bachelor party. I remember asking, "So what exactly are you guys doing?" Andrew smirked. "Relax. Dinner, a few drinks, maybe some poker. Nothing wild. Travis and nothing wild don't belong in the same sentence," I teased. He leaned in, kissed my forehead, and said, "Stefania, it's tradition. Don't overthink it." Tradition. Funny how that word can mean so many different things depending on who's using it. The night of the party, I stayed home, cooked dinner for one, tried not to check my phone every 10 minutes. He texted once, "Love you, miss you already," with a heart emoji. I smiled at the screen and told myself that was enough. By midnight, the apartment felt too quiet. I turned on an old TV show, let it play until I fell asleep on the couch. When my phone rang the next morning, I thought it was Andrew, but it wasn't. The name flashing on the screen was Travis. I hesitated before answering. His tone was casual, too cheerful for someone nursing a hangover. "Hey, Stefania," he laughed. "Crazy night last night, huh?" I frowned. "How's Andrew still asleep?" "Oh, yeah. He's probably dead to the world right now," Travis said. "Man, that guy had fun." Something cold spread through my stomach. "Fun," I echoed. "Yeah, you know. We had this dancer show up, total knockout, and things got a little, heated. But it's a bachelor party. Don't freak out. Okay, boys will be boys." For a moment, I didn't understand the words. My mind went blank, like my brain refused to translate them. "What do you mean, heated?" Travis chuckled nervously. Nothing crazy. I mean, sure, a lap dance, a few shots, maybe a little more. But come on, it's not like he's marrying the dancer. Just a final night of freedom, right? My throat felt dry. Did you just say more? Relax, Stephania. Andrew said you'd understand. Don't make a big deal out of it. Understand. I sat there gripping the phone, feeling my pulse pounding in my ears. Somewhere in the distance, a neighbor's dog barked. Cars passed by. The sun rose, but everything in my world froze. Travis was still talking something about how I should let the guy breathe before marriage. I hung up mid-sentence. For 10 minutes, I just sat there staring at the floor. The coffee on my table had gone cold, untouched. When Andrew finally came home around noon, he looked exhausted, hair messy, eyes bloodshot, still in the same shirt from last night. He smiled when he saw me. Morning, fiancé, he said, kissing the air near my cheek. You look serious. What's wrong? I forced a breath. Travis called. His smile faltered. Oh, what did that idiot say? I kept my voice even. He told me you hooked up with the dancer. Andrew blinked like he was calculating his answer. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. Come on, Stefania. It's not what it sounds like. Then what is it? It was a joke, a stupid party game. Everyone was drunk. You really think I care about some random woman? It's tradition. Don't overreact. He said it so easily, like the word overreact was supposed to make me calm down. But my voice didn't rise. It just got quieter. You slept with her. He sighed, annoyed, like I was interrupting his nap. It didn't mean anything, okay? I just got caught up in the moment. You know how these things go. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man I'd built my future around, and realized I didn't recognize him anymore. He rubbed the back of his neck. You've had your fun before, right? It's no different. Just one last night of freedom. My hands trembled, but I stayed still. Freedom, I repeated. From what, Andrew? From me. He didn't answer. He just shrugged. I turned away, walked to the window, and stared at the street below. Cars passed by. People went on with their lives. Then I said the words that came before everything changed. Okay, I hear you. He smiled, relieved. Good, so we're fine. I turned back to him, my voice calm but final. No, Andrew, we're not. The room went quiet. His smirk faded, confusion clouding his face. Wait, what are you? I didn't answer. I just walked past him toward the bedroom. My suitcase was under the bed. I pulled it out. And that's when I knew the wedding was over before it even began. I don't remember crying. I just remember the stillness, that strange, hollow kind of silence that follows the moment your world shifts. Andrew stood there blinking at the suitcase like he couldn't quite process what was happening. Stefania. You're being ridiculous, he said finally, voice laced with disbelief. It's not like I fell in love with her. It was just a stupid party. Just a party, I repeated softly, unzipping the case. Do you even hear yourself? He groaned, dragging a hand through his hair. You're making this into a movie scene. God, Stefania. Everyone does this kind of stuff. It doesn't mean anything. We're 2 weeks away from our wedding. Don't throw that away because of what I cut in my voice, trembling now. Because of you. He flinched at that, just barely. I started packing without another word, work clothes first, then my sketchbook, the half-empty perfume bottle he'd once said smelled like home. My hands shook, but every folded piece of clothing made my decision feel more solid. Andrew paced the room. Look, I messed up, okay? But it's not like I was trying to hurt you. It's just what happens at bachelor parties, Travis said. I stopped him cold. Don't you dare blame Travis. You were the one who made the choice. His mouth opened, then closed again. He exhaled, annoyed. You're really going to destroy everything over one mistake. I zipped the suitcase shut. You already did. For the first time, he looked scared. Not guilty, just scared of what losing me might look like. He reached for my arm, his voice dropping to that soft, persuasive tone he used whenever he wanted to win an argument. Hey, we've been through worse, right? You supported me when I lost my job, when things got rough. Don't turn cold now. I froze. That was the problem. I'd always been the one holding everything together, the one fixing, forgiving, waiting. Andrew, I said quietly, you don't get to cheat on me, and then ask me to comfort you. His jaw tightened. The charm melted away, replaced with defensiveness. You think you're perfect. You've never made mistakes. Not this kind, I said, staring him down. Not the kind that turns love into humiliation. We stood there in silence. He looked at me like he was searching for the woman who'd once believed he could do no wrong. But that version of me had vanished sometime between the words, it was just a party, and don't overreact. After a long pause, he muttered, "Fine. Go. If you want to ruin our lives over something meaningless, be my guest." He left, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed through the apartment like a gunshot. That night, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by wedding binders, floral catalogs, menu options, payment receipts. I stared at the numbers, the deposits, the list of non-refundable notes I'd written myself. I opened my laptop and started sending emails. Venue canceled, catering canceled, band canceled, florist canceled. Every click felt like tearing off another piece of my old life. When my phone buzzed again, I didn't want to look, but I did. Andrew. "Come on, Stefania. Stop being dramatic. Let's just talk." Then another. "Andrew. You're not really leaving, are you?" And finally, "Andrew. You're overreacting. You'll regret this." I didn't respond. I went to the bedroom, opened the closet, and saw his tuxedo still hanging there, tags untouched. Next to it, my wedding dress in its plastic bag. White, untouched, pointless now. I sat on the bed for a long time, watching the moonlight through the blinds. I thought about the first time we met the night in the campus library, when he offered to carry my books, the way he'd made me laugh so easily. Back then, he'd said, "You make everything feel less complicated." Maybe that was the problem. I'd made everything too easy for him. At 3 a.m., I finally texted my parents. "The wedding's off. I'll explain tomorrow." My mom called instantly, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, what happened? Are you okay?" I swallowed hard. He cheated. There was a pause, the kind of silence that only a mother's heartbreak can fill. "Oh, Stefania," she whispered. "Do you want us to come get you?" "No," I said. "I just need to handle this." And I did. The next morning, I started boxing up everything that was ours. Framed photos, the mugs we bought together on that road trip, the stupid ceramic cat he insisted we name Lucky. When I found the wedding invitations, all 200 of them, I sat down on the floor and tore each one in half. Halfway through, Andrew came back. He looked worse than yesterday, unshaven eyes, bloodshot, smelling like stale liquor. "Are you seriously still doing this?" he snapped. "I told you," I said evenly. "It's over." He threw up his hands. "You're unbelievable. You'd rather start over than forgive me." "What kind of person does that?" "The kind who's finally learned her worth," I said. He laughed bitterly. "Good luck finding someone who loves you like I did." I paused, staring at him. "You didn't love me, Andrew. You loved the version of me who tolerated your mistakes." He stared speechless. Then quietly I picked up the last torn invitation and dropped it into the box. "I'm done." That night I slept for the first time in days deeply without dreams. In the morning I called my boss. "About that transfer to our Denver branch," I said. "Is the offer still open?" By the end of the week, my apartment was half empty, and my future for the first time was mine alone. When I closed the door for the last time, I whispered to the empty room, "You wanted freedom, Andrew. Now you've got it." Leaving wasn't as dramatic as people imagine. There were no screaming matches, no tears in the rain, no pleading apologies, just the quiet rhythm of tape on cardboard boxes and the echo of footsteps in an almost empty apartment. I didn't post anything online, didn't call friends for sympathy. I just left. Andrew texted twice more that day. "Andrew, you're making a mistake, Andrew. You'll realize it when it's too late." I never replied. My parents drove up that weekend to help me pack. My mom brought sandwiches in an awkward silence. My dad didn't say much, just lifted boxes and patted my shoulder once in a while. When they saw the dress bag hanging untouched, Mom's eyes filled with tears. "You sure about this?" she asked softly. I nodded. "If I walk down that aisle, it'll be the biggest lie of my life." She didn't argue, just hugged me tighter. Andrew's mother, on the other hand, called me that night. I could tell from her clipped tone that Andrew had already spun the story his way. "Stefania," she began, "you young people throw things away so easily. Boys will be boys. It was just one night. Don't destroy your future over something so small." Something inside me snapped at that, not anger exactly, but a deep, clean realization. "No," I said quietly. "He destroyed our future when he decided I didn't matter." She scoffed. "You'll regret this." "Maybe, but not as much as I'd regret staying." I ended the call. Monday morning, I drove to the city hall to officially cancel the marriage license. The clerk gave me a sympathetic look, the kind you give someone who's trying not to cry in public. "Cold feet?" she asked kindly. I almost laughed. More like warm lies. By Tuesday, I'd signed the paperwork to transfer to my company's Denver branch. New city, new start. I spent the next few days selling furniture, closing my lease, deleting the shared Spotify playlists, unsubscribing from every wedding vendor newsletter that still said, "Congratulations, bride-to-be." When I called the venue, the woman on the line sighed when I said the date. "Oh, the Carter Moore wedding," she said. "You're canceling." "Yes." "I'm sorry, dear. The deposit is non-refundable." "It's okay," I said. "Consider it tuition. I just learned a very expensive lesson." $7,000 vanished in minutes, but it still felt like freedom. On the day I moved, Andrew showed up. I was carrying the last box to the car when I saw him standing by the parking lot, hands shoved into his pockets, sunglasses hiding the guilt in his eyes. "Stephania," he said, voice low, "we need to talk." I closed the trunk. "No, Andrew. You need to talk. I already listened once." He sighed. "I get it. I messed up. But we can still fix this. Everyone deserves a second chance." "Second chances are for accidents," I said, "not choices." His jaw tensed. "You're really just walking away, yes." He took a step closer, lowering his voice, like we were in one of those movie scenes where the hero wins her back. "You love me." I smiled faintly. "I loved who you were supposed to be." He blinked, confusion clouding his face, like the idea of being held accountable had never crossed his mind. When I got in the car, he slammed his hand against the roof. "You'll regret this," he shouted. I rolled down the window halfway. Maybe, but at least I'll regret it on my own terms. Then I drove off. The road stretched ahead, long, silent, and terrifying. I stopped halfway at a gas station, leaned against the car, and cried. Not for him, for the years I'd spent trying to be someone worth staying for. It was a strange mix of grief and relief, like tearing off a bandage that had already fused to the skin. By the time I reached Denver that evening, the city lights flickered like tiny promises. My new apartment was small, with boxes still sealed, and no furniture except a mattress and a coffee table. It was perfect. That first night, I sat on the floor with takeout noodles and my laptop open to work emails. The silence was heavy, but peaceful. Somewhere in the distance, fireworks popped over the skyline, some celebration I wasn't part of. I whispered to myself, "You did it. You left." For the first time in months, I fell asleep without replaying arguments in my head. Weeks passed quickly. Work became my anchor. I threw myself into projects, late nights, and morning coffee routines. My new coworkers were kind but didn't pry. On weekends, I explored hiking trails and local cafes, sometimes sketching people. I'd see couples, families, strangers who didn't know the version of me that had once planned a wedding, down to the napkin colors. I missed love, but not his love. Because his love had conditions. His love came with rules I didn't agree to. One night, while watching the sunset from my apartment balcony, I thought about him again. About how he'd laughed when I asked if it was true. About how he'd used the word tradition to excuse betrayal. And I realized something. He didn't cheat because he was drunk. He cheated because he thought he could. 3 months later, I got a message from an old mutual friend. "Hey, I thought you should know Andrew's been having a rough time. Lost his job. Some girl he was seeing scammed him. Long story." I stared at the text for a while, then typed back, "I'm sorry to hear that." And that was it. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want them. Because sometimes karma doesn't need an audience. It just needs time. That night, I opened a fresh notebook and wrote on the first page. She left quietly, but the silence screamed louder than any goodbye. I closed the cover, smiled, and went to sleep. For the first time, I wasn't the woman waiting for closure. I was the closure. Denver didn't feel like home at first. It felt like a waiting room, quiet, sterile, temporary. But then one morning, as I walked to work, I realized something strange. I'd gone an entire week without thinking about Andrew. Not once. Healing, it turned out, didn't arrive in a grand moment of closure. It showed up quietly in small, ordinary victories. Drinking coffee without checking my phone, sleeping through the night, laughing at a joke without forcing it. But just when peace started to settle in, karma sent me a story. It started with a voicemail from Nina, one of Andrew's old coworkers. "Hey, Stephania," she said hesitantly. "I don't want to stir things up, but you should know. Andrew's been in some trouble." I didn't call back right away. I wasn't sure I cared. But curiosity, as always, is a stubborn thing. So that night, I listened to the message again. Apparently, Andrew's wild night with the dancer hadn't been just one night. Her name was Jade. And she wasn't just a dancer, she was a professional grifter with a talent for charming desperate men. After our breakup, Andrew started seeing her secretly, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of ego. Either way, it didn't last long before she turned her con into a routine. She told him stories, sick parents, debt collectors, a chance to start a business together. He gave her money. First hundreds, then thousands. By the time he realized it was a scam, she'd vanished along with $8,000 of his savings. The irony hit me like a quiet thunderclap. The man who said his mistake didn't mean anything had just paid for it in full. A week later, another update came through the grapevine. Andrew's job at the ad agency had gone south. His performance tanked, late arrivals, missed deadlines, a reputation for being distracted. And Travis, the one who called me that morning after the bachelor party, he'd been dumped too. His girlfriend overheard him bragging about the party, laughing about how Andrew's girl totally overreacted. She'd packed her bags and left the same night. The universe, I realized, has a sense of humor. It might not be fast, but it's always thorough. Meanwhile, my life was quietly rebuilding itself. I'd earned a promotion, project lead, on a regional rollout. My boss said he admired my calm under pressure. He didn't know that surviving emotional warfare makes deadlines feel like child's play. I started hiking again, long solo trails, where I could hear my thoughts instead of drowning in them. The air in Denver was sharper, cleaner. Every step away from my old life felt like reclaiming oxygen. One Sunday, I met a group of hikers who invited me to join their weekend trips. That's how I met Caleb, a quiet architect with an easy laugh and none of Andrew's swagger. We became friends first. No flirting, no pressure. Just long conversations about work music and the strange ways people heal. He never asked about my past, and that's how I knew he was safe. One evening, after a long day at work, I sat on my balcony sipping tea, scrolling mindlessly when a new message appeared from an unknown number. Unknown. Hey, it's Andrew. I heard you moved. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a full minute before locking my phone. No response. The next day, another message. Andrew Jade scammed me. I lost my job. I need someone to talk to. I set the phone down, walked to the window, and watched the sunset. For once, the sight didn't make me nostalgic. Because I realized Andrew was still the same. He only called when he was falling apart. He didn't miss me. He missed how I held him together. Over the next few days, his messages multiplied. Andrew. Please, Stephania, you're the only person who ever understood me. Andrew. You can't just erase what we had. Andrew. I messed up, but don't you still care, even a little? No, I didn't. I deleted them all. But it didn't stop there. He called once, his voice hoarse, desperate. Stephania, please, just hear me out. Everything's gone wrong since you left. My life's a mess. I didn't say a word. Silence, I'd learned, is the most powerful language in the world. After a few seconds, he whispered, You're really not going to say anything, I finally answered. I already did, Andrew. You just weren't listening. And I hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I missed him, but because I realized something deeper. Forgiveness wasn't about letting him back in. It was about freeing myself from the version of me that waited for him to change. I lay awake thinking about the girl who stayed quiet when he joked about freedom. The girl who thought loyalty would be enough to make someone love her right. She deserved peace, so I gave it to her. Months later, a mutual friend told me that Andrew had left town. He said he needed a fresh start, they texted. Somewhere no one knows what happened. I smiled when I read it. Because that's exactly what I did, except I didn't run to escape. I left to rebuild. There's a difference. One Saturday morning, Caleb and I hiked a new trail that overlooked the city. The wind was sharp, the sky cloudless. He looked at me and said, You seem lighter lately. I smiled. Maybe I finally stopped carrying someone else's weight. He didn't ask what I meant. He just nodded like he understood. As we reached the summit, I took a deep breath and whispered into the wind. You were right, Andrew. Everyone does get one last night of freedom. I just chose mine differently. And this one, this life, this calm was mine to keep. It had been almost a year since I'd left. Long enough for my hair to grow out, for my laughter to sound different, for the scars to fade into something softer, not gone, but no longer aching. Denver had become more than a city. It had become proof. Proof that I could rebuild from silence. Proof that I didn't need someone else to feel whole. So when Andrew's name flashed on my phone again one Thursday evening, I almost laughed. At first it was a text. Andrew, hey, I'm in Denver. Can we meet, please? Just one conversation. For a moment, I stared at the message. It was simple, almost polite, but I knew what it really meant. He wasn't here for closure. He was here for comfort. I didn't reply. A few days later, he called from an unknown number. This time I answered. Curiosity, not emotion. Stephania. His voice was low, shaky. Thank God you picked up. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I said nothing, waiting. I know you hate me, he went on, but I'm not that guy anymore. I've been through hell. I lost everything. my job, my savings, my friends. Jade ruined me. He paused, waiting for sympathy that never came. I'm clean now, he continued. No drinking, no parties. I've been thinking a lot about us, about how good we were. I need a second chance. Why, I asked quietly. He hesitated. Because we were supposed to be forever. I could almost hear the practiced sincerity in his voice, the same rhythm he used when he wanted something. Forever doesn't survive betrayal, I said simply. He sighed, frustrated. You can't still be angry. I'm not angry, I said. I'm indifferent, and that's worse. He went quiet. The silence stretched long enough to hear the hum of my refrigerator, the ticking clock on the wall. Please, he whispered finally. Just dinner. I just want to talk. No, I said. Click. He didn't give up. The next week, a bouquet arrived at my office, white lilies and a note. To the woman I never stopped loving. My coworker Hannah handed it to me with raised brows. Ooh, secret admirer. I forced a polite smile. More like a ghost that doesn't know it's dead. I threw the flowers out before lunch. Later that night, another message appeared. Andrew. You didn't have to throw them away. I just wanted to show you I still care. I typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on none. Silence was my answer. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. When I looked through the peephole, I froze. Andrew, standing in the hallway holding a paper bag like a peace offering. His clothes were wrinkled eyes, sunken that once effortless charm replaced by exhaustion. I opened the door just a crack. Stefania, he said softly, I brought coffee, like old times. I stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind me. You shouldn't be here. He gave a small laugh, the kind that used to melt my anger. You always say that before forgiving me. I met his gaze. You're mistaking politeness for forgiveness. The smile faltered. I just want to talk. About what? The party you swore meant nothing. The woman who drained your bank account. Or how I rebuilt my life without you. His jaw tightened. You think you're better than me now? No, I said calmly. Just better off. For a moment, his mask slipped his face, hardening into something defensive, almost angry. You're cold, he muttered. I was right about you. You don't know how to forgive. I took a slow breath, meeting his eyes steadily. You're wrong, I said. I forgave you a long time ago. I just don't owe you reconciliation. He blinked, thrown off balance. What does that even mean? It means I'm done explaining my piece to the person who broke it. He stared at me, breathing heavy, like he was trying to find the version of me that used to cry for him. But that version no longer existed. After a long pause, he whispered, Please, Stefania, I need you. I shook my head. No, Andrew, you need someone to fix you, and I retired from that job. He looked down, eyes glistening. For a second, I almost saw the boy I used to love, vulnerable, scared, lost. But then I remembered the woman he'd made me become. Without another word, I turned, opened the door, and stepped back inside. He stayed there for a few seconds, then finally muttered, You'll regret this. Maybe I said closing the door, but I'll regret it quietly. The latch clicked, and that was that. He texted a few more times that week, long rambling messages that swung between apologies and accusations. Andrew, you were my world. Andrew, you abandoned me. Andrew, I can't sleep. Are you happy now? Andrew, you always wanted control. Congrats, you have it. Each one I deleted without reading twice. I knew how this pattern worked. Guilt, pity, nostalgia. The same cycle I'd lived in for years. But not anymore. A month later, he stopped texting altogether. No calls, no flowers, no letters. For a while, I wondered if he'd finally moved on, or if karma had taken the wheel again. One night, as I was locking up my apartment, my neighbor, an older woman named Marjorie, mentioned casually, You know that guy who came around asking for you last month, the one with the sad eyes? Haven't seen him since. I smiled politely. That's probably for the best. She nodded. Good. You've got light in you now. Don't let anyone dim it again. I thanked her, went inside, and for the first time in a very long while, felt something close to peace. Because I didn't need to know what happened to Andrew. Whatever lesson life had left for him wasn't mine to witness. The next morning, I opened my balcony door to the soft glow of sunrise. Birds were chirping. The air smelled like rain, and for a moment everything was still. My phone buzzed a work email, not a message from the past. I smiled and whispered, Finally! Then I poured myself a cup of coffee for one and sat in the light. I didn't need closure anymore. I was the closure. It came on a Sunday morning, the kind of day meant for clean sheets, coffee, and peace. I woke up to sunlight spilling across my floor and the soft hum of the city below. For the first time in years, I felt steady, like the ground beneath me wasn't waiting to collapse. Then my phone buzzed. a name I hadn't seen in months. Andrew Carter. No call this time, just one long email. Subject line, please read this. For a moment, my chest tightened. Not from longing, not even anger, just that strange tug you feel when a ghost decides to speak one last time. I hesitated, then opened it. Stefania, you probably won't reply. I get that. You've always been better at moving on than I am. But I need to say this, even if it's just to an empty inbox. I've lost everything. Jade cleaned me out. My job let me go, and most of my friends stopped answering my calls. I've been staying with my cousin trying to piece things back together. It's pathetic, I know. I keep thinking about what I did, how easily I threw away something good, how I laughed when you cried. I was so sure you'd never leave, that you'd forgive me the way you always did. I was wrong. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, Stefania. You were my peace, and I turned you into a storm. If you never want to see me again, I understand. But if there's even one part of you that remembers what we had before I ruined it, please know I'd do anything to make it right. You once told me that love is about showing up when it's hardest. I didn't, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I hope you're happy, really happy, even if it's not with me. Andrew. I read it twice, slowly. Not because I missed him, but because I wanted to understand the version of me who once would have cried over this. She would have typed something kind, something forgiving, something like, I hope you're okay. But that woman was gone. I closed the email. I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, but because silence was the answer he'd never learned to respect. Later that day, I met Caleb for brunch at a cafe downtown. He smiled when I arrived, that warm, quiet smile that never demanded anything from me. Rough morning, he asked. Just the past knocking, I said, sipping my coffee. He nodded knowingly. You didn't answer, did you? No, I said. Some doors aren't meant to be reopened. He grinned softly. Good, you deserve new ones. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't just escaped Andrew. I'd outgrown him. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, I took out my old wedding planner notebook, the one I'd kept buried in a box. I flipped through the pages, floral sketches, guest lists, a mock-up seating chart where our names once sat side by side. Then I tore out the first page, the one that said, Stefania and Andrew, our forever begins. I replaced it with a blank sheet and wrote instead, My forever began when I walked away. I smiled, closed the cover, and slipped it back into the box. Weeks turned into months. Andrew's email stayed in my inbox unread again and again, like a tombstone for a chapter already buried. Caleb and I grew closer, not like a movie romance, but something slower, steadier. He never tried to fix me, never asked for the story, just held space for it when I needed it to breathe. One night, as we watched the city lights flicker from his balcony, he said quietly, You ever think about him? Sometimes I admitted, but not with anger, more like remembering a book I outgrew. He smiled. That's how you know you've healed. I rested my head on his shoulder. The city pulsed below us, alive and indifferent proof that the world keeps moving, no matter who breaks your heart. Before bed, I glanced once more at my phone. Andrew's email still sat there unopened for months. I hovered over it for a moment, then hit delete. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Gone. And just like that, the ghost vanished. Sometimes people think healing is loud. Tears therapy, revenge, closure. But for me, it was quiet. It was learning to wake up and not wait for pain. It was choosing peace over nostalgia. Andrew once said his bachelor night was just a party. Maybe it was, but for me, it was the night my entire life began again. And that not his apology was my real freedom. If you've ever been told to, just get over it, remember this. Healing quietly is the loudest revenge there is. Because silence doesn't mean weakness. It means you finally have nothing left to prove.